Thank you for joining us on this episode of Lip's Garage. Today we have a new project. So I have a really bad habit of buying cars with great plans, great ideas, throwing a bunch of money at them, and then one thing or another happens, time or space, or hey, there's something I didn't notice when I first looked at it, which makes the whole thing not worth putting together. So I've got a new project today, and I'm hoping it's not one of those, because this has an opportunity to be something really good. So I'm fairly new to the tuner culture. The last tuner that I had before this car was even built. But this here is a 2002 Subaru Subaru Impreza WRX. So this is the first year that they were sold in the US. WRX was not a standalone model. It was a submodel of the Impreza. Now they're their own thing. A guy that I've known for a while, a musician, local here in town, has had some issues and be like, all right, I'm kind of done with this. I'm ready to move on. So we're going to go through, especially in this era, some of the things to look out for. What are some of the cool things about this car? What makes it retain its value so well? And if there's value in it as a project or just value in it as parts. So taking a look, this is the turbocharged 2-liter, not the 2.5 that Subarus are known for head gaskets for. 2 liters have some of their own issues, but is what it is. The guy that I got it from said at one point he had actually put a JDM engine in this because the original one had failed for whatever reason. I have not been able to confirm this. I'll see if he still has the paperwork. Dirty, hasn't run in a while. I bought this thing about 7 months ago. He was driving up until he had a failure. I'll get in that in a moment. But everything looks complete. Pretty similar to my wife's 2020. So taking a look, we do have some 17-inch wheels. They do have the factory center caps on them, so most likely a factory option wheel. Let's see, manual seats for both. It is the manual transmission. Kind of everything looks factory in here. Let's take a look. Got some power windows, handbrake, which is good for drifts. How's it going? Hey. Taking a look, everything in back looks half decent other than just dirty. So the most part, everything looks pretty straight aside from this corner here. It does have quite a bit of Wisconsin love to it. The biggest ones being within the rocker panel down here and on the other side. So definitely into there. So the reason why he sold it to me, let's see if I crawl underneath. These things are notorious for the subframes rotting out, but this subframe is not structural per se. It's more of a crash impact thing. So really, really common on those, and they do have aftermarket ones available, so that I'm not so concerned about. But what ended up happening is this control arm rotted in two, which jammed the wheel up. So that's not a horrible fix. And if these are kinds of the only things, I've got to go and check structurally, but the frame itself, the subframe, or the unibody I should say, all that looks pretty clean. I got to get underneath it completely, get a better look. But if the only thing I got to do is throw a set of control arms on this and a front subframe, then I'll put it together and keep driving it. All right, so giving it a quick once over, I'm taking a look at the things I need to replace. Some of them are cosmetic, some of them obviously are structural, so I'll get that taken care of. Most of the things that look like they need to be replaced would be things I'd replace with upgrades anyway, so I'm not super concerned about that. Again, the body's got some issues that will need to be addressed down the road, But even if I just put it together and I'm able to drive it around as is for, you know, a couple years, get my money out of it, and have some fun while I'm driving it, no big deal. Otherwise, if I decide I know I can get my purchase price out of it and parting it out. If the engine is as good as he says it is, I can steal the drivetrain, put in another project. I think an all-wheel drive, you know, 5-speed manual go-kart would actually be really, really awesome. Factory 5 used to make a kit called an 818 based off Subaru drivetrain. They don't make the kit any longer, but I am on a Facebook page for people who have projects that they're selling, so I might be able to still find one. So I mean, there's a lot of different options you can do with this. But again, if I can put it together, have some fun, bang around, you know, the wife and hers in this one, you know, teach the kids how to drive a manual in this one, where I'm not really worried if something gets a little beat up. You know, there's certain pros to having a car like this. It runs and drives, but isn't necessarily cosmetically, you know, a winner. There's some things you can do with that and still have some fun and enjoy it. But definitely the first thing I'm going to do to it before I do anything else is give this thing a good cleaning, because this thing's been sitting under a tree for a while. It is a mess. All right, so here we are a few days later. I got a good wash, started a polish and a wax. Hard to see this time of year. We got a lot of dust and a lot of branches are coming down. Got the interior mostly cleaned out. Got some of my cleaning product. And then yesterday I did pick up a box of extra and spare parts. One of the things that he had was the wheel lock key, which I hadn't looked for, but he said he had. So I'm going to go through those. And then the next thing we're going to take a look at, the biggest issue right now, is the control arm that's busted. So the factory ones are stamped steel, especially up in this climate. I mean, Wisconsin just eats cars. But I did order a replacement, and the replacement one is aluminum. So we're gonna make sure that that fits and everything. And if that's the case, then I might go ahead and try and find one for the other side and get a little preemptive about it. So there's where the actual ball joint goes. And then these are where they bolt up. So I might have to order up a ball joint as well. We'll see how that goes. But next step, get it up on jack stands, get the wheel off, and take another look. All right, so I got the wheel off. Let's take a look at what we're taking a look at. So first thing I noticed was this part here being pretty well rotted out. Super common on these, unfortunately. Like I said, Wisconsin tends to eat vehicles. We get a little further underneath. Instead of being the whole actual subframe that, like, say, the engine and everything rests in, this little guy is a big U-shaped piece that comes around down to there. So depending on what source you listen to, that is a low-speed collision piece and just a little bit of chassis stiffening. A lot of folks actually take those off. I'm going to obviously take it off because it's rotten. I'll look to replace it just because it was on there. But that's not what kept this thing from driving. So as we take a look, we've got a lot of signs of rust underneath here. Obviously, you know, we got a sway bar link that's not super good. You can see surface rust on all that stuff. Body's got some rust issues, obviously. But what we're looking at is that right there. The control arm itself is actually separated. So in theory, won't take much to change. We pop out the ball joint here, which actually the ball joint is part of, let's see if I can get a good shot of it. The ball joint right here can come out. And then we've got a bolt right there. And then we should have, once I take the subframe piece off, should be a double bolt there. So no reason why this shouldn't be an afternoon job, as long as everything comes apart all right. I do have a little propane torch to help if need be. So we'll see where we're at. All right, so with a little bit of help with my friend Mr. Air Hammer and a little bit of help from Mr. Propane Torch, I got off most of the pieces I needed to get off. So this here is remains of that big, they call it a subframe. This section on the driver's side is still attached, or it's rusted out. I've got a couple bolts left to get out. Basically, consider this kind of like a subframe connector, like on some of your unibody cars, Mustang specifically, where you add in a subframe connector. This is something very, very similar to that concept. It's just factory installed. This here is the control arm that I took off. As you can see, it rusted. Well, tripped over myself. It is rusted in half. So took a little bit to get some of the bolts out. It does have the press-in style ball joint on the spindle end. And then again, that's where it broke. This is my replacement unit. So you can see the bevel for the ball joint. This one actually has a removable rear. I know they have some suspension kits that you can replace that with a different angle or different strength maybe to be able to affect your suspension geometry. But obviously with the aluminum unit, possibly a little bit lighter, will not rust again. Here's a little tab for the sway bar link, so I'll yank that off before I put the piece on. But everything off, so let's go ahead and start putting it back together. All right, so getting in here, I do have the new control arm in. I've got the ball joint on order, new sway bar link obviously on order. One of the things I had an issue with is once I pulled everything apart, the axle itself pulled apart. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace that while I'm in here and just pretty much focus on one corner at a time. Get all this back together. I'll get a cleanup of the rotors. Can't really tell in the video, but the pad's actually looking halfway decent shape. But I'll pull them apart, get back on screen. So the pads are in halfway decent shape. I'll get everything pulled apart, get a good, sand on the pad, get fresh material, get a good clean on the rotor. So I'll be able to do all that while I'm waiting for the other parts to come in. So that's kind of where I'm at. I did notice that the boot on the inner is tore as well. I think what I'm going to do is wait on that one, and if I do end up keeping this, I might just replace the entire rack and pinion as opposed to just doing the inner tie rod. So stay tuned for that. But we are almost there. If all the parts would have been in stock, I would have had this done today, but we'll pick it up tomorrow. All right, it's been about 2 weeks. I'm gonna wrap up what I did with the project here and kind of show what's in the future depending on what I decide to do with this. So we did get a surprise snowstorm last night. Wasn't really expecting that. So it's gonna change the rest of my season. But coming through, I did get the control arm finished. I've not put the sway bar link on yet, and I did get the axle replaced. The axle kind of held me up a little bit because on the inside edge where it connects to the transmission, you won't be able to see from this view, there's a little roll pin that I didn't know, and I bought that thing for about 3 days, so I finally figured out what was going on. Then it took me like 20 seconds. But it is on. The thing does run and drive, but we do run into another issue. So when I took it out on the test drive after, it had some pretty horrible death wobble and felt like it's coming from the rear. So we come up and take a look. That is the rear cross member, and that is rusted through as well. That's one of the lateral control arms. So this side is together, but still in pretty rough shape. So I do need to replace that guy. Not a problem. They're a couple $100 for a factory one. If you want to do the full racing, you're looking about $2 grand. And then when you're up under the vehicle, pardon my finger, again, not sure I'll be able to get it or not. There's a lot of rust in the floorboard. So kind of got some thoughts where to go from here. So there is a lot of regular maintenance that's going to be due on the vehicle, getting, better brakes, doing oil change, checking all the fluids, doing all that, and getting that rear subframe done. At minimum, that's going to be what I do. And then I decide from there kind of where to go. Again, I could keep it myself, have it just be a toy to run around with, to play with. Again, kids both want to learn how to drive a manual transmission, and it'd be a good idea to teach them on this where, if they burn up a clutch or something of that nature, it's not a big deal for the type of car and the money I'm going to have into it. The other thing I could do is go full out race spec, get that, better rear subframe, get the racing one. I could go so far as to do the full rally conversion with this and give it a little bit of a lift, put the aggressive tires on it, and just have something to, fun to burn around. Maybe take out the dirt fish. We've been talking about going and doing that one of these days. There's also another company out there called Smith with a Y that do pickup conversions, and they actually make a pickup truck conversion for the O2 WRX. So I got some ideas. Again, it'll run and move around the block, but until I change that rear cross member, wouldn't be anything I'm actually putting on the road. So I'm definitely going to do that to make it safe. And then we'll see, what do you guys think? Is it something that I should build? Is it something I should flip? Is it something I should take just to the wall, do the pickup conversion, basically make a Subaru Rally pickup that we can take out and horse around in and gravel, or even now that winter is here, here's a Challenger I'm working on. Now that winter's here, just have a good little backyard basher. So let me know what you guys think. In the meantime, I know a little bit different video than what I normally post, but as always, I do appreciate those that tune in and check out what I'm doing and the ramblings that I've got. If you feel comfortable doing so, leave a like, leave a subscribe, throw a comment down below. What do you want to see? Especially with the Subaru, what's going on with that? What should I do there? So any comments that you have, as always, feel free to leave them. I'll answer what I can for sure. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next episode.